My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are continuing our thematic study of 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and the resurrection. Paul said, flesh and blood shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven. Well, we're exploring then the relationship between resurrection and kingdom. I have to tell you, I was raised believing that there's a dichotomy in those two concepts, at least in some form. Here's what I was taught. I was taught that, well, yes, indeed, there was spiritual resurrection that began with the preaching of the gospel in Acts chapter 2, and that's the day the kingdom was established. Okay, fine so far. But then, when we read other texts about the kingdom and resurrection, 2 Timothy chapter 4, 1 and 2, I charge thee therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who is about to judge the living and the dead as appearing in his kingdom. Oh, well, that's got to be the end of time. Even though the Bible never speaks about the end of time, and even though the kingdom established has no end. So, a division was created between the establishment of the kingdom and spiritual resurrection that began on the day of Pentecost, and the eschatological kingdom and resurrection that ostensibly comes at the end of time. Well, down through the years, I came to realize that that is a completely false concept. As just indicated, the Bible does not talk about the end of time. The Bible is unequivocal in asserting that the kingdom of Christ, his rule, his reign on the throne has no end. Now, folks, it's kind of difficult to have a resurrection at the end of time, at the end of the Christian age, when the Christian age has no end. It's just not possible. Now, in the last video, I shared with you the direct connection between 1 Corinthians 15, Isaiah 25, verse 8, and Matthew chapter 8, verse 11. Here's the connection one more time. Paul said, when the mortal has put on immortality, when the corruptible has put on incorruptibility, then shall be brought to pass the saying, death is swallowed up in victory. Well, that's a direct citation of Isaiah chapter 25, verse 8. So, the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 would be when Isaiah 25 would be fulfilled. Well, the resurrection foretold by Isaiah 25 would be the time of the Messianic banquet. Isaiah 25, verse 6. At that time, the Lord shall make on this mountain a great feast. Scholarship is absolutely 100% united. That's the Messianic feast. That's the Messianic wedding banquet. Okay? Are you with me? So, 1 Corinthians 15 would fulfill Isaiah chapter 25, 6 to 8, and the prophecy of the Messianic resurrection banquet. Jesus, remember now, this is a bit of a rehearsal, but I'm getting to a point that you really got to catch. Jesus in Matthew chapter 8, verse 11, was dealing with a centurion who had tremendous faith. And Jesus said, verily I say unto you, many shall come from the east and the west and shall sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom. What do we have? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob sitting down at the Messianic wedding banquet in the kingdom. Well, as I pointed out, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were not set and are not sitting at the banquet, the kingdom banquet in Hades. They are sitting at the Messianic wedding banquet by being raised from the dead. You know, it's absolutely amazing, and here's a point I want you to see. It's very, very common in both the amillennial circles and in the postmillennial circles for it to be admitted that Matthew chapter 8 verse 11 was fulfilled in AD 70 when the sons of the kingdom were cast out. After all, Jesus said Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would sit down at the Messianic wedding banquet when the sons of the kingdom were cast out. Okay? So let me reiterate. This is an incredible point. Amillennialists and postmillennialists alike commonly say that Matthew chapter 8:11 was fulfilled in AD 70 when the sons of the kingdom were cast out. In my book, The Resurrection of Daniel chapter 12 verse 2, Fulfilled or Future, I document where Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, Joel McDermott all tell us Matthew chapter 8 verse 11 was fulfilled in AD 70. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob sat down at the kingdom when the sons of the old kingdom were cast out. Do you catch the power of that? Okay, Matthew chapter 8 verse 11 would be when Isaiah 25, 6 to 8 would be fulfilled. Isaiah 25, 6 to 8 is the Messianic wedding banquet at the resurrection. But Matthew 8 was fulfilled in AD 70. Therefore, Isaiah 25, 6 to 8 was fulfilled in AD 70. But if Isaiah 25, 6 to 8 was fulfilled in AD 70, that means 1 Corinthians 15 was fulfilled in AD 70. And oh, now you've got to catch this. Gentry, DeMar, McDermott, all good men, by admitting and by teaching that Matthew chapter 8:11 was fulfilled in AD 70, admitting therefore that Isaiah 25, 6 to 8 was fulfilled, are admitting that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and those from the east and the west, etc., were resurrected in AD 70. And they are admitting that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, being resurrected, were not resurrected in biological human bodies raised out of the dust. I mean, after all, if they're currently sitting at the Messianic resurrection wedding banquet, isn't it pretty obvious they were not biologically raised at some proposed end of time? They were instead resurrected from the Hadean realm, just like Isaiah 25 said they would be when Jerusalem and the temple was turned over to foreigners, destroyed. They were resurrected when the sons of the kingdom were cast out in AD 70. Resurrection and kingdom go hand in hand. By admitting that and teaching that Matthew chapter 8:11 was fulfilled in AD 70, my good friends are thereby admitting that the eschatological resurrection of Isaiah 25 and 1 Corinthians 15 was in AD 70. And we got more. We'll see you on the flip side.